Joining us now is the Conservative MP Sir John Redwood and Liz Truss supporter. Hi, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. Why do you think that the markets have reacted so badly to the Chancellor's mini-budget?
Well, the markets globally were reacting very badly to the Federal Reserve Board's announcement when they said they were going to hike interest rates a lot. And we saw a big blizzard of bond selling ahead of the Chancellor's announcement. And then the world speculators in currencies who had been raiding the yen and the euro in past weeks turned more of their attention to the pound, and we saw them do a sharp sell-off in the pound, which then reversed very rapidly to some extent on the Monday morning. Markets will do what markets want to do, and these are not things that governments should seek to control. Governments need to follow counter-inflation policies that work, which they didn't do in the previous 2 or 3 years, and they need to follow policies that promote growth. My message today is that the government are right to see the main threat for the year ahead as recession, not inflation, because the good news is that all the forecasters say inflation will come down a lot next year, and the sooner the better.
So how does inflation come down with interest rates going up to the extent that we are being told 6%? I know what you're going to say in response to that, and I would suggest if interest rates go up to 6%, we're going to see people not being able to afford their mortgages and having to hand back their homes.
Yes, and that would be quite a wrong policy response. And I hope the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee is wiser than some of these rumours and leaks coming out, because I don't think there's any way in which we need 6% interest rates. Their own forecasts, Bank of England's own forecasts, say that inflation will be back to 2% within a couple of years. They may be right this time with their forecasts. And I think they should be very cautious about taking more action, because they have lurched from a monetary policy that was flagrantly too permissive and very inflationary to one which is now very tight. And I think it's quite tight enough to do the job we need to do, which is to get inflation down.
Well, the Bank of England is independent, as we know, and they feel that it's necessary to stabilise the pound by increasing interest rates significantly.
Well, it's not their role or remit to stabilise the pound, and they won't be able to stabilise the pound. The pound is buffeted by huge forces in global currency markets where collectively the world traders trade far more money than the British government could throw at it. The last time we had a policy of trying to defend a particular level of the pound, it was a particularly disastrous policy. It was called the European Exchange Rate Mechanism, and it first of all gave us an inflation, and then it gave us a recession. We don't want boom bust, and trying to target the currency would be a supreme error which would do damage to our prosperity.
Not as disastrous for the pound as we're seeing at the moment, some might suggest. Do you think the Bank of England is overreacting?
Well, they haven't done anything yet, and I'm very pleased they haven't. I fully support the bank
potentially an increase in interest rates to 6%. That's what is being speculated. Do you think that would be an overreaction?
Well, that isn't a statement of the Bank of England, I'm pleased to say. The Bank of England has wisely decided it doesn't need an emergency meeting or an emergency interest rate rise. And why would they? Because, as I said, their forecasts are that inflation will come back down to target within a couple of years, and that they have already put up interest rates on several occasions in the past. More importantly, they have stopped printing money to buy bonds, which I think was one of the inflationary forces. If the Bank of England wanted to do something helpful, then they would announce that they don't need to be selling some of the bonds that they bought at very high prices at big losses. They could say to the markets, we now think the bonds are too cheap for us to want to sell any. That would be very helpful.
OK, let's talk about the International Monetary Fund then, the lender of last resort. They've also got very grave concerns overnight. Why are they wrong?
Well, the IMF were very wrong, as was the Bank of England, over the inflation which they now rightly worry about. They didn't warn us or the other central banks in the run-up to the big inflation that the monetary policies in 2021 were far too loose, that interest rates were far too low, and that money printing was getting out of control. And it's a great pity they didn't warn about that. Now they should be looking forward. And as the global forecasts point to lower inflation in America, Britain, Europe, as do the domestic forecasts, they should be saying the new threat is recession. I don't want to see people losing their jobs on a big scale and income squeeze because we're in too big a recession. We should be fighting recession Of course, we must be prudent with finances, but the truth is that if the austerity policies have their way and we have a big recession, the borrowing won't go down, the borrowing will soar. And my fear now is that the official forecasts in the United Kingdom, which for 2 years greatly exaggerated the amount of borrowing to try and encourage a high tax policy, are now underestimating the amount of borrowing we would be forced into doing because of the world slowdown.
So the Bank of England is out of step, the IMF is out of step. Let me put a story to you that I've been reading in the Sunday Times, The Guardian, other newspapers as well. Interesting to get your take on this, Sir John, if you would please, reporting that there was a group of Liz Truss supporting hedge fund managers who attended a dinner of a week ago. Every one of them was shorting the pound, which means, as you know, but for the benefit of others who perhaps don't, they were betting that it would go much lower against the dollar. The paper reported several of them made small fortunes shorting the pound. The Financial Conduct Authority has been asked to investigate. Do you think they should?
Well, I know nothing of the circumstances of this alleged meal and who went, so no, I can't comment on that. If people have broken the rules or done something wrong, then of course it should be investigated, but I know of no evidence of that.
But I suppose you only know if they've broken the rules if you investigate it.
Yes, but I don't even know this meal occurred, so I'm not the person to cross-examine on this, but I, like most people, don't wish to see people breaking rules, and if they have, they should be investigated.
OK. How did you feel about the latest opinion polls that we saw from YouGov over the week? Well, they was done over the weekend. We saw it yesterday. Tories 17 points behind Labour.
Well, I look forward to them improving, clearly. That wasn't a good poll, but the poll that matters, as people always say who are behind in the polls, is the one that occurs when you have a general election. I would imagine a general election is still a couple of years away, so I think a lot is going to happen before then, and I will be supporting the government every time it does things which raise the prosperity and freedoms of the British people. So that is surely the way to become more popular.
Yeah, I'm sure that Liz Truss is not going to find it mildly amusing, given that normally you do see when there's a new leader in post, they do tend to have a polling boost in the first few weeks, don't they?
Well, these are very exceptional times, aren't they? And the new Prime Minister took over against this background of global market meltdown, bonds being sold off everywhere, shares falling a lot as well, as people sifted through the truth of what I've been trying to tell you, which is that we are at that point where inflation is receding as the main problem and recession is looming. And that does require a policy change, and I therefore look forward to a rounded policy change from this government, not merely some tax rate reductions, but also measures to promote more investment, more capacity, more domestic energy, more domestic food, because we need to tackle the balanced payments deficit, and measures to get better value out of all our public spending so that we control the deficits in the right way.
OK, it's great to talk to you. We appreciate you taking the time this morning. Thank you.